amazing Women Speak podcast, inspiring and motivating every Black woman to own, honor, and execute her amazing, individually and collectively, as it was established at birth.
So I'm Crystal Gunn, founder of the Amazing Woman Network and host of Amazing Women Speak. And I thank you in advance for sharing this with your friends so we all can get in on what should be a really interesting conversation tonight. So we're back at it again, but this time, let's talk about sex. So Michele, welcome and thank you as always for saying yes to Amazing Women Speak. And I must admit that I'm looking forward to your opening question and how you're going to facilitate this conversation. So let's just get to it.
Thank you. Good evening. Welcome to another amazing conversation that is on deck for you tonight. One that I too am looking forward to. It is an important conversation that needs to be had. And while we may find some lightness and joy in it, it really is a conversation as Black women that we need to be paying attention to. Let's talk about sex. Facebook, we invite you to join in this conversation. You're going to discover that it's what you think it is, and more importantly, what it's not. We are so excited to have two amazing women with us tonight. As always, this is the fastest hour of your day. We invite you into the conversation. Drop your questions and your thoughts into chat. We've got two folks that can provide some answers and some really deep thinking that you should have at the end of this conversation. So let's get it started. Let's find out who we have in the room. Cain, come on in and introduce yourself.
Hello. Thank you for having me. I am Cain, the coach, and I am known as the sexual technique specialist because for over 30 years, I have taught thousands of people how to have the sex life and the intimacy that they deserve. I make the uncomfortable conversations comfortable. So
awesome. And so before we get into this and folks get distracted as I did as we were preparing for the conversation, can you please just lift up the cup? Let's bring it into the room as a part of this conversation. So ladies, as you're seeing, right? So you won't be shocked as we're having this conversation. There is power. And we're going to talk about what that means as we go along. Thank you, Cain. We're excited to have you.
Thank you.
Come on in and introduce yourself.
I am Verna Felder, owner of goddesscrystalsteam, home of the 5-star Yoni steam in Michigan in Southfield on Northwestern Highway.
Okay, so we first need to get some clarification out of the way. Let's do some defining. Tell us, Verna, what is a Yoni coach? What is that process all about?
Okay, so I'm a Yoni steam practitioner, and what I do is I help women to release not only toxins, but release emotions from negative relationships, from things that no longer serve them. So when they come and get a Yoni steam is hydrotherapy. It is where a woman sits on a low stool. Underneath the stool, there is a pot of boiling water. In the boiling water, there's herbs. Once the water comes to a boil, the boiling water creates steam. The herbal medicine is extracted through the steam, and the vaginal area absorbs the steam and carries the herb medicine up through her body. So it's a deep cleansing of the vaginal walls, the womb, the uterus, and all of her feminine organs.
Thank you. So first thing we got clarification on. Cain, come in and tell us, what's the difference between sex and intimacy?
Great question. Okay, a lot of people actually use those terms interchangeably, or they think that intimacy is sex. Intimacy, you may have heard that term, into me you see. So into me you see. It's a place of vulnerability. It's a place of transparency. It's a place for you to connect with your partner. It actually has, you don't have to have intercourse at all. Okay. It could be a situation where you're holding hands with your partner, you're sharing with your partner, and then you have sex. And sex is not just penetration. Sex is oral sex, anal sex, it's penetration, it's kiss, it's how you define it. So again, intimacy is more of a place of connection, and well, sex is connection too, but it's more of a place of vulnerability, I would say, and transparency.
Tell us a little bit about the connection to intimacy and the individual themselves, right? Like, so is this a conversation for people in relationships, or can a single woman find value in the conversation we're going to have tonight?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Because if you don't know you, how is anybody else going to know you? We have to understand ourselves. We have to love ourselves. We have to accept ourselves. And we have to know how to receive pleasure, just like we have to know how to give pleasure. And that starts with us knowing ourselves and being intimate with ourselves first. So absolutely. So they'll get value in this. So.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay, so got a little bit of the definition out of the way, the understanding who this conversation is for. Now I want to talk a little bit about the two of you, because I know folks are going to want to know about your information. This is an interesting space to find yourselves in. How did the two of you end up in the spaces that you are, being willing, calling women into owning their bodies in this way? What led you to this? Verna.
Yes. I went to one of Coach Cain's gatherings, and it was a gathering on how to properly do fellatio. Once I went to her class, and I need to say that I thought I knew everything until I went to Coach Cain's class, and I realized that I didn't know as much as I thought I knew. But anyway, I went to her class, we met there, and I thought, hey, what you're doing and what I'm doing, that's a great combination. We need to get the team together. And that's how we met. And we've been doing workshops, we've been doing Q&As, we've been doing podcasts ever since.
So back us up one step, Verna. How did you get into the space that you're in? What made you want to open up a shop that we're going to service women in this way?
Well, I had been doing spiritual work for a long time. I study alternative medicine. I'm a crystal therapist. I'm a womb minister. I study sacred geometry. So I had already been doing things like that for years. So the Yoni steaming was just an add-on to the spiritual work and the healing work that I was already doing. It was just another level of it.
Okay. I do want to come back on that spiritual healing component of this, but hold on to that. So Cain, how did you get into this?
Okay. So I've been studying sexuality since I was probably about 14, when I was still my parents' books. I was that friend that everyone came to with the questions. I was that friend that everyone told those deep secrets to. And so many years ago, I started an adult novelty company. So I was selling toys, and I had never been to a toy party in my life. And so I was doing toy parties how I thought they should be done. And so when people would come, they said, I've never been to a toy party like this. And so the same people will book me over and over and over. And I couldn't understand, like, I got the same toys. Why do people keep booking me over and over here? And so what I found out was what made me different was that I was teaching. It was more of a teaching class. It wasn't just, here's a bullet, here's this vibrator. It was me really teaching. And so what I found also was that when people would get me along, they had question upon question upon question upon question. And then I thought, like, where would somebody go to get answers to their question without feeling judged? Where would someone go and where somebody can be frank and really explain to them? Because when you think about it, sex is a learned art form. Just like we learn anything else, we need to learn how to give and receive pleasure. And that's something, in my day, you didn't talk about sex.
Correct.
You just didn't, you barely wore red. So it became my passion, where I wanted to teach. That's where my space is. People call it my ministry. I say, if people follow me, I say anything, but I try to do it in such a way that's very welcoming. I try to take the uncomfortable out of it. And I let people know, yes, you are normal, because that's one of the number one questions. People don't think that they're normal because we don't have these important conversations. So that's why I appreciate you guys having us on, because these are the type of conversations we really need to have. So that's kind of what started the whole thing, is my desire and my passion for sexuality and expression, and then the need of wanting to help people. feel okay talking about it.
So one of the things that is really important to us on this platform is inviting women into a space where they get to first unpack who they are, right? They get to learn more about who they are. And so this is another connection on another level. So before we talk anything about partners, I want to talk about the intimacy of self. And then Verna, that's where I want you to come back in and talk about the spiritual healing that Yoni steaming can provide for women, right? So it is always important for us to leave women feeling empowered, and that understanding intimacy does not mean that I have to have a partner in order for me to enjoy who I am or learn more about who I am. That when I do find a partner, if I decide to go that route, I know more about, like you said, Cain, what it is that I need in order to be able to please somebody else. I have now discovered how to please myself. Talk about individual intimacy.
Yes, definitely. One of the things that I prescribe to people all the time is self-pleasure. And some people go, what do you mean, Cain? You want me to masturbate? I say, yes, I want you to. Yes. You want me to touch myself? I said, you want others to touch you, right? And so they're like, well, yeah. I said, so why not touch ourselves? This is a gift that was given to us. And if we don't know what pleases us, how do we have an expectation for somebody else to know? I always say this. So I always start with, let's look at yourself. What is it that you love about yourself? Explore the beauty of your body, because a lot of us, we have no idea where our erogenous zones are. We don't know where, I was talking to someone about, just to give you a little bit of example, one time I was doing a show and I was talking about the clitoris. And the person, she was 32 years old from California. And she said, Cain, what's the clitoris? And I stopped and people in the room were like, what? You don't know, And I, calmed everybody down, because that's what this space is for. I don't care what the question is. That's what that space was for, was to explain. So I went into detail explaining why she needed to know what the clitoris is, how that was the foundation of her pleasure. So I gave her a couple of exercises to how to explore her body. I gave her exercises how to love her body. And so a lot of it starts with masturbation. I do a lot. I'm a masturbation advocate. I really am. And another reason why I really push masturbation is because if you're single and you're not intimate, you're not getting that blood flow to your vulva, and then atrophy can set in. And so you don't want a situation where when you do get a partner, you're finding that you're having challenges experiencing an orgasm, because you haven't had any blood flow whatsoever to your genital areas. So it's not just the self-pleasure, it's also a health component in there that a lot of us, we don't even know about. We don't know that you need to touch yourself. You need to touch yourself. You need to explore. You need to learn what feels good. And so that's part of the intimacy with yourself and the learning. And also, like I said, that translates into your interaction with another partner as well, or with a partner as well.
Right. So how do you normalize that, right? Like you said, you didn't talk about it, and heavens forbid, I know my mother, if she is listening, is clutching all of her pearls. I promise you, right? Like, you don't have that conversation. That is just how you were raised, right? So
yes,
right? Like my children, my goddaughter, like the conversations are different now, but when we were growing up, right? So how do you normalize having that conversation?
One of the things that I do, and I can't even really, it's a gift, to be honest with you, because when I talk about it, it's just like you and I are talking like this. It's like the weather. It's nothing strange about it. It's nothing odd about it. You can ask me anything you want. And what I found is that people, they have the questions. They're just afraid to ask.
Right.
They don't know who to ask. And they're afraid of being judged. That's what it boils down to. But when they meet someone, especially like me, someone who's just very open and free about it, people I have met, and no joke, I've known them for 30 minutes and I know their complete life story standing somewhere, their complete sexual life story. And I think that it's just creating a safe container for people to be expressive. And people know if you're judging them. People know if you're open. And I think that they feel that. When they talk to people like myself, because this is what we do, we encourage that, so.
Thank you. So Verna, come on in here and talk to us about the benefits I heard you lift some of them up at the beginning of the conversation, and I found it interesting, right? Like you talked about the ways of healing that we don't even think about, from broken relationships, from other traumas. Tell us about the spiritual benefits of a Yoni steam, being in your space completely, right? Like all of the offerings. What is that like?
So I want to go back to the spiritual component for a minute, and I want to say this. Since 2016, I've probably steamed over 1,000 women. And what I can do is I can sum up the 3 major issues that the majority of women have when they come see me. The first one is some part of them is not enough. Maybe they're not pretty enough, not light enough, not dark enough, not thin enough, not thick enough. There's always a not enough of something that they're suffering from. The second one is they're putting everything and everyone else before themselves, like it's a badge of honor. Oh, I do everything for everybody else and I'm last. And then the third thing is entertaining relationships that don't serve. Those are the 3 factors that every woman that comes to see me is suffering from, one of those 3. What happens is we'll have a conversation, a one-on-one conversation, and one of those 3 elements will come up. Once they come up, then we talk about the foundation, we talk about the root of it, or we talk about a program that may come from the female lineage. It could be cultural, and sometimes it's religion that programs that thought of, I need to put everything and everyone else before me. So by the time we have these conversations and the root of the not enough, or the root of the why she's putting everyone else before her, or the root of why she's entertaining relationships that doesn't serve, once those things come up, then we can go to the steaming throne. The intentions are set. Let me release any people, places, things, thoughts, habits that no longer serve me. And of course, we know that once we set the intention that it's released, then we turn it over to spirit and the work is done. So when they come to Goddess Crystal Steam, it's more than just sitting on the pot. No woman will ever leave in the same energy that she came in from, because it's about a mind, a body, and a spirit release. And I like to say this, the thing about Coach and I is we balance each other, because once a woman comes to see me, she's achieved her confidence. And then once she goes to see Coach Cain, she starts to realize that she has power and where that power comes from.
So I have a question, or I want you to go a little deeper on something. One of those 3 major issues that you spoke of was entertaining relationships that don't serve. What does that mean? And what does entertaining those type of relationships, what are the effects of that you see in women?
Okay, so let's talk about what entertaining a relationship that doesn't serve you looks like. It looks like you're not being valued, you're not being respected. He doesn't support you. He's not, or she's not motivating you. They're not a support system. They're not a foundation. They're not someone who's respecting or even being a partner to those things that are important to you. They're not providing any kind of foundation. They're taking more than they're giving. It's not a relationship of reciprocity. It's usually a relationship where the woman is giving and giving and giving, and on the other end, there is a partner who's receiving and receiving and continuing to receive until that woman finds herself tired. She's exhausted. She's out of balance, and she doesn't understand why. And a lot of times she doesn't even realize that this relationship is not serving her. All she knows is that she's not feeling whole, she's not feeling respected, and she's not feeling valued. So she comes in to see me and she's a little vibrationally low. And then that's when we start to look at, well, how is he serving you? And a lot of times, and I want to say this to you ladies too, when a woman comes to see me and I ask her a question and her response is, I don't know, then that tells me that she is disconnected to that part of herself that knows everything. She's disconnected from her higher self. So I know that the first thing we have to do is we have to reconnect her to the goddess within, to that part of herself that is directly connected to the God energy. And that's where the real work begins.
You said something. You said something, right? And so in the promo, when Crystal talked about, right, like this is a conversation that you think it is and a conversation that you don't. And you just lifted up the part of this conversation that folks were not expecting or joining in. So thank you for that, right? Like you have to look at the whole of who you are to even be connected, to even be thinking about anything else. And so thank you for that. So what else is a woman going to experience when she comes to see you? Do I come as I am? Is there some prepping that I need to do, some level of awareness, or am I able to just walk in as I am and begin this process?
I don't need any of my clients to bring anything but an open mind and a willing spirit. When you come to me, we are going to do some real emotional healing. And in order for an emotional healing to take place, the client or the subject has to be open and she has to be willing to tell herself the truth about herself. And she has to be willing to do the work that goes along with that. So she'll come in, we'll have our consultation, which will bring up all the stuff that's going to come up. She needs to understand it is a safe space. It is a safe space to be vulnerable. It is a safe space to admit those things that you probably never wanted to look at. It's a safe space to look in the mirror at yourself naked with no clothes on and say, okay, I need to work on this and I need to work on that, and it's okay. And then once we have that very real, very open, very candid conversation, then it's time to set intentions and do releasing. Now, sometimes she might not want a Yoni steam. Sometimes she might just come in for an energy cleansing. So we do energy cleansings as well. We use sage. I might use turkey feathers. I might use black tourmaline or obsidian crystals. It just depends on the level of negative energy that we need to absorb or that we need to extract out. We need to remove. I like to call it energetic surgery. So that may be another service that she decides to get. Also, too, I'll have women, they'll call me and they'll say, well, I don't know if the Yoni steam is for me because I've had a hysterectomy. And then I'll say, well, you have a vagina, don't you? And you still use it, right? And the thing that, having a hysterectomy is a lot like this. When a person has an arm or leg removed, they'll say, my arm's not there anymore, but it still itches. It's the same thing with a hysterectomy. The energy of your womb is still there. So even though physically you don't have a womb anymore, spiritually and energetically you do. Because as you know, energy never goes away. So we have that group of women.
I can appreciate that. As a person who has had a hysterectomy, I absolutely can relate to what you're saying. And it is so very true. So very true. Thank you for that. So I need a coach. What's the process, right? Like, does something have to be wrong in my marriage, in my relationship? Is there a series? Do we go from no knowledge to all the knowledge I need? Like, what is the process?
Nothing has to be wrong, actually. You could be totally right, but you want to make it better.
Okay.
You know, there's always, I just celebrated my 34th wedding anniversary, and we still are growing. We still are doing things. We're still are discovering, and it's been 34 years. So sometimes people are in these long-term relationships and they're like, I want to keep going down this path. What else can we do to enhance our relationship? So maybe that's something that they're looking for. Like, I don't do individual coaching anymore. I'm stopping that because I just don't have the time anymore. So now the process is moving more toward training. That's where my passion is group sessions. So right now what I'm working on is group training for female bodies and group training for couples. So it's literally just signing up. I put together a curriculum, like the one that I'm working on now is the 7 habits of making relationship work, based on Gottman's the Gottman method. And essentially it's all of the foundational things that you need to have a successful relationship. And then I'm going to couple that with the intimacy piece of it. Okay. Because a lot of times people think that, okay, in a relationship, we just have to learn how to communicate better. But there's also this erotic piece that has to be nurtured and taken care of as well. Yeah, the companionship is there, meaning your day-to-day life, the children, you're going to work every day, the household, the bills. Yeah, you have that. But just like you're working on those, you need to work on that erotic piece. And that is the piece that a lot of people they forget or they neglect. And sometimes unknowingly.
Yep. So I want to have some conversation about what you just laid, right? Because as women who are doing all of the things, right, and have lost themselves, I'm exhausted, right? And so how do I find the priority? And maybe this comes back to that self-intimacy, right? Like, I've created a desire for myself. Like, why do I want to reward him when I'm doing all of the things, right? And I'm exhausted. And now I need to perform. How are we coaching women past that, right? Like, so you're denying yourself to a degree when you deny him out of the frustration because you're doing all of the things.
Well, there's a reframing that
I'm not asking for myself, I'm asking for
okay. Well, there's a reframing that's going there. There's a reframing that has to happen with that, because the way it was delivered, like even with your question, it almost sounded like it was a chore to do it. It's not an outlet. It's not a place of pleasure for you. Okay. Not for you, just in general. So now it's this reframing, like, this is a place for you to connect with your partner. This is a place for you to find joy with your partner. This is a place for you to rejuvenate with your partner. But what happens a lot of times is that that's how we get into this low and no desire, is because we're tired. We're tired. So when you're tired, that's the last thing on the list. But since that is a huge component of a relationship, you have to make it a priority, which means that you need to plan it. And usually when people say, just like you put it on the schedule, you're not going to miss the doctor's appointment. You're not going to miss taking the kids to school. You're not going to miss going to work. You know, you're not going to, you keep those as a priority. So why not put the priority of your intimacy with a partner and yourself there? Okay. So I often encourage, and a lot of times people say, Cain, are you serious? That's taking the fun out of it. You're saying you put it on the calendar. Like, for example, with my marriage, we are both very busy. So we have several days a week that's earmarked on our calendar where we both know, don't schedule anything, don't do anything, because that's our time to connect, whatever that looks like for us. And so, like I said, the planning of sex has such a negative connotation, but why? Why does it? Why does it have a negative connotation? Because if you think about it, what could that sex life look like? You can light candles, you can really plan when you know you're about to do something on Friday. You know, you got your wine there, you got your late, you got whatever, your toys, your wraps, you got your wine there, you have whatever you need, you got all the lube you need, you have everything you need to set that foundation. So it's really a reframing, like, what's going on there? And then, are you getting pleasure? So if it's a chore for you, is it fun? And if it's not, if it's a chore, why isn't it fun? Because sometimes a person may not be interested because they know it's going to be fast. They know they're not going to get what they need out of it. They know it's just not going to be good. So what's the point? And I'm tired.
Right.
And I'm tired. Right.
Right. And I really love that reframing part, right? Because there is a benefit for me, right? Like to release, to have an orgasm, there is a benefit for me. And so while I'm denying him out of my frustration, I'm also denying myself. So I really like you reframing that for women to hear. And then how do you make it not feel like a chore, right? How do you? Because we fit, right? Like it is my responsibility.
Right.
I want to add something.
Right. Go ahead.
I want to also talk about the component that sex and an orgasm is also connected to how a woman is feeling about herself.
Definitely.
A lot of times I'll have women come to see me and they're saying that they're not getting wet or they don't feel right about it or they don't want to do it. And here's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. I had a client come in last week and she said, girl, I'm going to get a BBL. And when I get this BBL, I'm going to be popping. And I said to her, so the only way you think that you're going to be hot and sexy is once you get that BBL, I need you to feel hot and sexy before you get it.
Yeah.
How a woman feels about herself has a direct connection about how sexual she's going to be, about how she's going to be able to receive and give intimacy. It's all connected. If a woman is not feeling sexy, if she's not feeling attracted, if she's not feeling desirable, then she's not going to be able to have the confidence that she needs to tap into that power that's going to take her sex to the next level. So again, mind, body, spirit is all connected to our ability to be sexual and to be intimate.
Thank you for that. So Cain, I think you were getting ready to offer something around, I really love, Verna, what you brought in. That is so important for women to remember their worth. And being able to build their confidence certainly creates confidence in other spaces. And as Black women, right, like we're constantly being pushed and punched and valued, so undervalued, right, for who we are. And if we don't have the things happening, right, like that's how society has deemed us value add by the way that we look physically. So we chase all of these things and think that they're going to be the magic pill. So I really love the way that the two of you are partnering to think about how do I bring my whole self to get full value that I can, again, I really love the reframing piece of that there's a connection to who I am that I have to discover and go a little deeper on to get true value for everything else so that I cannot look at being with my partner as a chore, or it's my responsibility to serve him, reminding them around serving myself.
Exactly. And then we have to be careful when you view intimacy or connection or sex as something I have to do, you're unconsciously associating it with something bad. So it's going to be like, it's almost like, okay, I've checked this off my list for the week. I've got them. That's what it boils down to, instead of something that you're looking for as a way to relax, because the orgasm helps me sleep. So sometimes sometimes I just need to calm so I can get some good sleep. Then the other piece of it that I always ask is what is it that brings you joy? Like, what is the best sexual experience for you? Or what feels amazing to you? What do you like the most? And sometimes people don't know the answer to that question. They really don't know. They're unsure. And so if you don't know what brings you joy, if you don't know what feels good to you, if you have yet to experience it, why would you want to go running over doing something that's and I'm tired? So sometimes we need to do some introspection and kind of unpack, like, what's going on with that? Or what would you like? A lot of times people, they're afraid to tell their partner. And this is another piece. or their partner sometimes is unwilling to hear it. So their partner may not be doing something that they like in the bed, but they won't tell them.
Right.
They will not say a word because you want to save that person's ego at the expense of your pleasure. And so what you are doing is teaching that person how not to please you.
Mhm.
So give us, Cain, one strategy, right? Like, because I know you're talking to a lot of women right now who, right, like feel like if I say something, I'm emasculating him, but I'm not satisfied. Like, how do I approach that conversation?
Okay. So one of the first things you want to do is you want to don't start with what you don't like. Start with what you do like. Okay. That's where you start because we want to be careful. We don't want to hurt feelings. That's not the goal. And that's the quickest way when you say you trash or that was whack or whatever. Like you came too quick. They know they came too quick. You don't need to remind.
You try.
So, but this actually happens. These have been real conversations. So what you do is you talk about what you do like. Okay. And then you say, I really love that so much. And I would love it if you do more of that. So you're slowly guiding them. You're slowly guiding them. And then another thing, while you're in the middle of the act, a lot of us are mute. And I understand that some people don't want to talk, but moan, do something. So if your partner hits a spot that feels good, go, oh yes, don't move. Because what you're doing is you're training them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then if they're in a spot, or don't stop. You're training them because they're in a spot. Okay. If they're doing something that you don't like, you can gently guide them back by saying, oh, baby, let's do this. Go back, or something like, or something. And then encourage them like, yes, right there. So after the act is over, talk after you finish. Like I know my husband and I tell people this all the time, and we're talking 34 years later, we still talk about our sex, especially if we do something new. I'm like, what do you think about that? Well, you hit that spot. That was good. I didn't like that. I like that. I'm saying we talk at that moment because that energy, that sexual energy is there, that feel good, all those feel good hormones are there. So that's a wonderful opportunity to talk as well. When you're outside the bedroom, if you have real huge challenges, you want to talk outside the bedroom. Okay. But always start with the good. It's like the sandwich technique. You start with the good, you say whatever your challenge is and what you would like more of, and then end it with something good. Okay. But don't focus on what you don't like. Okay.
That's a really great strategy. That is a really great approach, right? Communication is hard in general, right? Because of the ways in which, like, Mars and Venus is a real thing. So having to talk about intimacy and what I need to be fulfilled can be challenging if you're already struggling with good communication in your relationship anyway. And so trying to think about ways in which it becomes more pleasurable, and I would be willing to do it more often, or I'm interested in doing it more often because there's a benefit to me, right? Like, so it becomes cyclical. I really like your thinking and your sharing around that for folks.
Let me add one more thing for people who, and I know people don't agree with this. However, when you meet a person and you think you're moving in that direction, you need to have a sex conversation with that person.
Amen.
Early. Okay. Because it's no need to waste your time.
Credit score.
100%.
You need to have this conversation. And the reason why I like to have the sex conversation up front very early on. So I was 20 something years ago, my husband and I were separated 20 something years ago. And so I was on the dating scene. And one of the things I would ask very early was if they did oral sex, if they gave oral sex. And I've had people say no. And I was like, it's so nice meeting you. Nice talking to you. So
I was one sip away from danger.
So they were like, are you serious? And I said, oh, I'm very serious. And so they said, well, I can learn, I could do this, but I'm not going to convince you to do anything, first of all. And the thing is that with a person like me, if you think that that's something that you're having trouble with, you definitely can't. We are not compatible in no form or fashion. And I'm not going to pretend like I'm okay with that. And that's what we do. We pretend like we're okay with something and try to think that they're going to change. But if they're delivering who they are, accept what they're telling you. And then again, the reason why I'm saying have the sex talk, it's going to tell you whether or not they're interested. Do you like the same things? Are they interested in pleasing you? Do they have a problem with you even having a conversation? Because if they have the problem right now, what's going to happen? What's going to happen when you get in a relationship? What's going to happen years down the road when you need to have more talk? If you need to talk about this in the future, because you will need to talk about it in the future. So that's why I subscribe to having the conversation very early on, so you know what you're getting into and you can make the decision whether or not you want to proceed. But sex is a huge component in a relationship.
So I'm glad you brought up that conversation piece, because one thing I know for certain, we don't have enough conversations about finances and sex, right? In relationships, we just don't have enough about it. But as we're talking about this, and you talked about starting that conversation early on when you meet somebody, but when we know back in our day, right, that sex conversation was taboo. And even though we've come years ahead, in a lot of instances, right, that sex conversation is still taboo. People are having sex, but they're not talking about it.
Yep.
So, like, what's that age, like, that you need to start having sex conversations with your children, right? And how do you like I'm very, very open with my daughter, sometimes to the point where she's like, Mom, really? I'm like, well yeah, let's talk about it. But what's that age look like, and help ease somebody into that conversation with their sons and daughters?
The conversation starts very young. When I say very young, I mean 6, 7, 8, but okay, there's things that you talk about. You're not talking about intercourse at 6. You're talking about the proper names of their body. It's not a pocketbook. It's a vulva. You know what I mean? And so you want to make sure, and there is and I cannot remember, but I will get it to you so you can maybe post it for your listeners. There is an organization that has a breakdown of what the conversation should be based on age. Okay. And it has like 6 to 7, 8 to 9, 10 to 11, and it has a breakdown. And I think that guide is a wonderful foundation for parents to start with, and they can pick and choose what they feel is appropriate for their children. But I think that the conversation needs to start earlier. When we talk about that, they say we had the talk. It's not a talk. It's an ongoing conversation. It's an ongoing conversation, because our children need to know the proper names. I was talking to a woman, and I said, I was talking about my granddaughter and her vulva. And they said, well, why are you calling it a vulva? Most women don't know that that's not your vagina. What you look down at and what you see between your legs, that's not your vagina. That's your vulva. And I teach that a lot, because we were never really taught that. We were not taught that that's not your vagina. Your vagina is in the inside. The vulva is on the outside. But it's small things like that. So the conversation needs to start very early on. And just to, I also often encourage people with teenage boys. Now, this is a tough conversation for a lot of people, but this was one I had with my son. So we know that our sons often start masturbating relatively early. Okay, we know this is happening. So what the pattern is that they will masturbate, and they will masturbate very, very quickly in an effort not to get caught. Okay, all right. So keep that in mind. They're masturbating and they're doing it very fast, so they pop like this. So what you in turn are doing is teaching your body to come fast. So now you're an adult man. And guess what's happening when you're in your relationship with your partner? You come fast because you have conditioned your body to come fast. So I tell people, and I had this with my teenage son, I tell people, you need to tell your child to slow down, that you're going to, you know, that they're doing it. You're going to respect their boundaries, you know, not bust in their room or anything like that. But have that conversation that you need to slow down because you are training your body. And that's what we see as educators and sex coaches and sexologists, is that men have had on years pattern of quickly masturbating, and now you're trying to retrain them how to control their ejaculation. They're coming quick, and it's a direct correlation between the two.
So before I kick it back to Michele, Verna, quick question, right? Because I love that you just don't offer the service. I love everything that you overlap with that. Can you speak about sex and manifestation, please?
Absolutely. I want to say this. A lot of times I'll have a mature woman who has been in a relationship that wasn't positive. So what does she decide to do? She decides that she's going to get on the wagon and not have any sex for 3 or 4 years. Okay. Then, like Coach said, she comes to me because she met a guy and she likes him, but now she can't get wet. So she's thinking that a Yoni steam is going to work it all out for her. And, you know, with a few Yoni steams here and there, it will. But here is the thing about sex and manifestation. When you are not having a regular orgasm, you're cutting off an energy flow. The energy flow that you're cutting off is an energy flow that helps you in every other aspect of your life, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, financially, psychologically. So when you decide that you're not going to have sex with the human, that's fine, but you still need to figure out a way to manually have your orgasms so that energy flow, which carries on into every other aspect of your life, continues to provide abundance, prosperity, good health, and a level of comfort that we end up depriving ourselves of when we're not having a regular orgasm. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And let me add on that, even if it's not an orgasm, because there are certain people that are unable to experience orgasms for whatever reasons, but you still need to generate that blood flow, whether you actually experience the orgasm or not. You need to stimulate that area.
Fastest hour of your day.
Fastest hour of your day. Right, Cain the coach, right? So fast, and we've only scratched the surface of this conversation. And I'm so very grateful for the ways in which you've brought light and more information to our listeners. It is so important as Black women that we remember our worth and our value as individuals in this world, and what that means as relates to our sexuality, the thing that we don't talk about, right? Like when you said pocketbook, like it took me all the way back. My God, right? All the way back. And how you intentionally remove the shame, right? Of having these conversations, and okay to talk about your body and to know the body parts. It is so important for so many reasons that we normalize at the right age, at the right levels, at the right type of conversation. But for full-grown women to still be stuck in the shame of not being able to have this type of conversation, thank you for moving the needle just a little bit. I hope our listeners has found as much value in very early parts of this conversation. Again, we scratched the surface. Thank you for sharing and to bringing some light to that. How, Cain the coach, can people find you?
Yes, you can find me at romanticdiscovery.com or on my Instagram, where I teach a lot. On my Instagram is Cain, CAIN, the coach. That's
I
at
love
Cain
it.
the coach on
So
Instagram.
you just introduced another word, right? That we didn't get a chance to talk about. We talked sex, we talked intimacy, romance, and how that threads out, how it is the connector, and that romance. Even I like you lifting up that sex does not mean intercourse, right? So all of those ways in which we get to connect with our partners. Thank you for sharing that. Once again, how can people find you?
Again, that's romanticdiscovery.com, and on Instagram at Cain the coach, and that's Cain, CAIN, the coach.
Thank you. Verna.
Yeah.
Coming in for Yoni Steam, is that a girlfriend experience or should I come alone?
That is completely up to you. It can be a
Okay.
girlfriend experience or it could be a solo experience. It's all about how you want to experience your first service.
Okay, how can
We
people?
also do parties too, parties of up to 6.
Oh,
Yes, and there's wine, there's cheese, there's chocolate covered strawberries. I have a massage therapist. We call him Chocolate Thunder. It is an absolute divine experience.
and how can people find you?
goddesscrystalsteam.com, Goddess Crystal Steam on Facebook, and Goddess Crystal Steam on Instagram.
And where is your brick and mortar located?
It's on Northwestern Highway and Inkster Road in the Applegate Shopping Plaza.
All right. All the access and from beautiful Black women, right?
Absolutely.
Which we really didn't get a chance to dive into, right? Like, I know that you two are in very unique spaces that are usually dominated by people that don't look like us. So thank you for giving us a space to be able to come and talk to somebody who looks like us, who understands the complexity of what it means to be a Black woman, who is choosing to own her amazing through a part of her sexuality. Thank you both for being with us tonight. The fastest hour of your day. And I someone really put this one on, right? Like really put the foot to the pedal today. Crystal. Oh, so Verna, somebody wants to know, do you need to shave before having a Yoni Steam?
Absolutely not. Nope. Come as you are. However, don't go get a wax and then try to go get a Yoni Steam. That's a bad idea. You do need to take any piercings. If there's piercings, you need to remove piercings. If you have started your cycle, then we need to wait up to 3 days after that cycle is over.
Great information. Great information. Thank you. Crystal.
Last month was Women's History Month, right? And our topic all month long was my seat at the table. And we really lifted up women who were, one of few in their industry, or definitely were owning their space in that industry. And of course, with 4 weeks, we don't get to touch on as many dope women as we know that fit in that category. And you two definitely fit in that category. You are doing, both of you, some amazing things in these spaces, and I celebrate you in that. And I appreciate what you're doing to continue to uplift and empower women. I figured the conversation tonight would be just as informative as it is. And as Michele said, I swear, I think we only touched the surface. So I'm definitely extending this invitation for you all to come back so that we can go a little deeper. I think it was a great conversation, and watching the people that chimed in, we had some extra men that chimed in this time as well, because this information works both ways, right? And I think it's important for healthy relationships for you and your partner to be able to explore it. Thank you both for your message and being as dope and incredible as you are. So again, I absolutely positively celebrate you. A little sponsorship message. The Amazing Women Speak is sponsored by the Amazing Women Network, which was created to unite and empower Black women globally, focusing on our core pillars of reclaiming our personal power, mind, body, and spirit, reclaiming our financial power, and increasing our social involvement. And I think we touched on that pillar of reclaiming our personal power some today. So again, I thank you for that. Please, everybody, find Amazing Women Speak on YouTube, Spotify, and Roku. And do us a favor. Be sure to subscribe on the YouTube and Spotify channels, even if you don't listen on those platforms. It will definitely help us out. And as you go to subscribe, take a look at past episodes. Look at the topics and find the one or the ones that speak to your soul. I guarantee you, you will find plenty. And then share them with someone that you know. I am Crystal Gunn. I am a Black woman, and I own my amazing. Michele.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Crystal, always thanking you first for your obedience to the call that God has put on your life to create a platform where amazing Black women can come together, uplift one another, share information, and collectively grow. To continue to provide a space where we change the narrative that Black women cannot celebrate each other. I thank you, my friend, for your ongoing obedience to the call that God has put in your life. Mom, unclutch your pearls. It is okay.
It's over.
It is okay to have the conversation, say the words, and know that we are getting better when we know all of who we are. I'm so very, very grateful to the two women that have joined us tonight and educated us a little bit more about owning our power and owning our amazing.
Yes.
I am excited to be a part of these conversations each and every week. My name is Michele Harper. I am a Black woman, and without apology, I own my amazing. Verna.
I am Verna Felder. I am a Black woman, and I own my amazing in a most powerful way.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Cain the coach.
And I am Cain the coach. I am a proud Black woman, and I own my amazing.
Yes.
Thank you all.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Absolutely. We will not be here next Sunday because next Sunday is Easter. Am I correct? Yeah,
That is
next
correct.
Sunday is Easter Sunday, but we will be back the following Sunday with the topic of soul alignment. So please mark your calendars 2 Sundays from now at 7 o'clock. You do not want to miss this conversation. Michele, thank you again for facilitating such an awesome discussion. Thank you to our listeners, and we will see you in 2 weeks at 7 o'clock.
Awesome.